Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Today is Thursday, January 7th, 2021. The time is 1:32 p.m. This is a special meeting for our Parks and Waterways discussion. Attending are Commissioners Duncan, Brooks, and Fillios. Do we have any changes to the agenda? No changes. We do have 3 items. We're going to take up item 3 first because it should be relatively quick, and items 1 and 2 kind of flow into one another. So, item 3 is the request for a swim area boys camp cross. Nick, are you going to address this?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Nick Snyder for the record. As the Commissioners might recall, we've discussed this a few times. The advisory board.
Can we get close to a microphone, please?
Yeah. All right.
Sure. Sorry, Commissioner. Nick Snyder for the record. Back to Camp Cross. Camp Cross is a unique camp on Lake Coeur d'Alene, just in the curvature there of Lofts Bay. There's a sharp point where boaters cut that corner. They're coming out of the boat launch. And though there are many points on Lake Coeur d'Alene and many of our lakes, this is unique, Commissioners. There's a lot of kids in the water. I'm going to defer to KCSO if you want more specifics. But again, it's a unique location where boaters are coming in and out due to the boat launch, due to the mooring buoys. And there's a lot of kids in the water as they're cutting that corner. At any given time, there can be 50 to 75 kids in there. And I was out on Lake Coeur d'Alene with KCSO and the rest of the Parks and Waterways team. We assessed that corner, and we're recommending that 6 swim buoys be placed to be paid for by Camp Cross by way of an MOU, as we would do in any of these other situations where we would memorialize each party's responsibility, in this case, that they are responsible to pay for splashing, ongoing maintenance, and that they would maintain a standard commensurate with the county's expectations. So it's my recommendation, Commissioners, unless you have any other questions, that we make application and get an MOU done.
Who's going to pay for them again, Nick?
It would be Camp Cross.
Camp Cross. Okay.
Good.
You're good with it? Bill, any thoughts?
No, I think it's long overdue.
Ready?
Yeah, I move that Parks and Waterways works with Camp Cross in order to get 6 swim buoys deployed.
I second the motion. Aye.
Aye.
Aye, and the motion is carried. Thank you. Okay, moving back up to item number 1, KCSO. That's our sheriff's organization. Marine Division and Post Falls Police Partnership Update.
Well, we'll do the,
Who's going to lead us off here?
No, Sergeant Miller, Sergeant Klinkefus.
I'll lead us off. I'm training Sergeant Miller, so. Or he might be training me. So I guess I do have a document that I did send to you folks.
Yes.
I have a smaller one that we could share with the Friends of the River, whoever else.
Please.
So I guess I'm here to more answer your questions than anything that wasn't answered in the document that I sent you guys.
So how did the 150-foot rule play out? Were there injuries? Were there more damage? Were there accidents?
Well, no injuries that we can tie back to it, no crashes that we can tie back to it. Damage is very subjective. You know, I mean, there was reports from some homeowners, hey, that there's still excessive wakes and we're still experiencing what we experienced. But as I noted in the after-action review, it wasn't any worse than any previous year. But, you know, I don't think it really had much of an impact. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, can you just summarize the report for everyone's benefit?
Yeah, so the report talked about the patrol hours that we did on the Spokane River. There was 900 patrol hours given to the river. About 24 citations were written. 2 of those were for the 100-foot no-wake zone, the previous ordinance that's still in effect. There were no citations written for the new excessive ordinance. And that was mainly due to the fact that it was a new law, and our stance on that was education versus enforcement. I'm estimating, we didn't track this statistic, but I'm estimating there was about between 10 and 15 total stops probably for violation of the 150-foot rule. over the course of the summer once it was in place, and those folks were educated and warned in those situations.
Out of 900 hours, there were 10 to 15
Stops.
Stops.
In reference
Stops.
specifically to that 150
Right.
foot, right,
Right, the
throughout the whole
excessive
entire
weight.
summer, and that's an estimate. Could have been more, probably more like less, probably closer to 10. Right, we didn't track the exact reason for every stop, obviously. And so, it's difficult, really, for us to say whether it really had an effect. As I noted in the document, when law enforcement is present, the public tends to follow the rules way more often, right? And when we're not there, they don't follow the rules. And so we didn't see an egregious violation of this ordinance while we were present. Folks tended to pay attention to their wakes, they tended to pay attention to their distances, and they tended to adhere to the rules and regulations. Obviously, when we're not around in that specific instance, that's when we would get some reports where, hey, people are not doing what they're supposed to do, or at least the public's opinion that they were violating the ordinance.
Is that with every law on the river or just the
Well,
one?
that's with every law.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
I think the public's generally pretty good anyways. They do a pretty good job irregardless of whether we're there, but they tend to follow the rules a little closer while there's a patrol boat in the
And
area.
thus, the reason for extra patrol on the river.
Right. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And so, speaking to the Post Falls partnership, out of that 900 hours, approximately 300 of those hours were Post Falls PD officers that were on the river helping us. It was a benefit. I believe it was a benefit to the program to get those extra hours on the water. It was more visibility for us, more patrol boats on the water. So there was a lot of positives that came out of that. We've got some tweaks we'd like to possibly make to it later. That's between us and Post Falls. Some things that we'd like to do with scheduling and things like that where we can improve it. And so I believe the goal would be is moving forward with a partnership this year, because again, it adds more visibility on the river for law enforcement. It does help us out, and the partnership, I think, was a benefit overall. But we do see some things where we could make the scheduling a little bit easier and make it a better program for this coming summer.
Okay,
Okay.
great. So did you, well, if you want to discuss it, I'm in favor of working with Post Falls again. So
Oh,
we
absolutely.
just want to give direction to go ahead and pursue that relationship.
I think absolutely we do need to continue. It's interesting because when we started this discussion, it led to the recruitment, if you will, or volunteer Post Falls. And the first time, and Sergeant Klinkefus, you and I were there when we met with Chief Knight
Yes, sir.
and other members in Post Falls, and both Chief Knight and Chief White indicated, wait a minute, not Chief White, Ben Wolfinger, Sheriff Wolfinger, who's now gone, of course, basically were in favor of no towing. They were willing to go that far. What do you think?
That's an option.
On the river,
That's
excuse
an
me,
option
on
on
the
the
Spokane
river.
River.
You know, would it solve some problems? Of course it would. But you're also going to be restrict. You're going to
Right,
restrict the
right.
public if you do that. And so, you know, I guess my answer to you is would it help in this instance to not allow towing on the Spokane River? And would it help certain things with excessive wakes and some of the busyness of it? Yes, of course it would affect that in a positive manner.
Right.
But where you folks unfortunately have to weigh is the restrictions.
Oh, sure.
We're further
Because it
restricting the boating public. And
Belongs to the public.
it does. The waterways belong to the public. And I've pointed out many times that, interestingly, all the homeowners that have docks that are complaining of damage, they have permits for their docks, but they're called encroachment permits. They're encroaching on the waters of the state of Idaho. And so they're encroaching on areas that the boaters are technically allowed to boat. You know, so you have to balance that, and that's the untenable position the board is in, so.
And I do see law enforcement's position because of the, if you restricted any activity, your job would be less. So I do understand that,
Yeah,
but,
that's true.
Yeah.
you know, I rather get you more bodies than restrict activity, so.
And the size of the boats are increasing. The boats are larger. They're drafting deeper. It's just the makeup of them is just larger. And I noted in the document as well a statement that basically there's lots of wakes that are being created that I believe some citizens would consider excessive. But per the ordinance and the definition, they're not excessive. They're not being artificially made. They're not using ballast tanks. They're not using hydrofoils. They're not doing things, that are artificially enhancing the wake. It's just how the boat's made. And additionally, the traffic has gone through the roof. It's exponentially more over the last 10 years than it was before. So it all adds to the problem.
Okay. So I think, and Bill, you haven't really weighed in here, but I think it's fair to say that the three of us are fully in support of enlisting the help of Post Falls again for this next boating season?
Absolutely.
Okay. Fair enough. And we're kind of moving between items number 1 and number 2, tending toward item number 2, which is considering a change to the ordinance, the 150-foot ordinance. Terry, does anybody want to weigh in from the advisory board?
Sergeant, you may just want to sit up here.
Yeah, why don't you hang out there, stand close to, get as close to the mic as you can, Terry, so Bill can hear.
Okay, Terry Warner, Chairman of the Parks
Thank
and
you.
Waterways Commission. Back on December 10th, we had our meeting, and at that meeting, Mr. Stafford came from the Spokane River Association and requested either doing away with the 150-foot rule on the Spokane River or also discuss no towing. I almost feel like we got put underneath the bus here just a little bit ago, because at our meeting, the Sheriff's Department pretty much said that the 150-foot rule forced everything to the middle of the river, which then forced the other boats in closer to the docks, and so it just created a new problem.
Okay.
Today, it almost sounds like they're not really taking a position, but, so we had 4 members present.
I don't know if that was an official position of the sheriff's office. It may have been mentioned possibly in a meeting, but I've never known that as being an official position.
It was the only information we were given at our meeting. We weren't privy to your report or anything, so. So we had 4 members present that night. 2 other members were absent. After probably an hour of discussion back and forth, trying to get a position one way or another, I made a motion to eliminate the 150-foot no excessive wake rule on the Spokane River. Received a second, and we ended up with a split vote of 2-2. After further discussion and back and forth, Mr. Harris made a motion, basically the same motion, and at that point, it passed 3-1. So why that's our recommendation, I'm not going to say it's a strong recommendation, but that's where we ended up. I know Mr. Torgerson was the nay, and he would like to speak also a little bit and give his position if possible.
And I think Doug had brought to my attention there might be a correction in the minutes that he's going to suggest. And so maybe we want to hear from Harris first and then
Okay, because these minutes are just draft, they haven't been approved at our
meeting.
next meeting, so.
Thank you, Terry.
Thanks, Terry, appreciate it. Doug, did you want to speak?
It's Doug Harris. I'm the Vice Chairman of the Parks and Waterways Advisory Board. What my motion was for the board to reconsider the 150-foot.
This board.
This board, yes, that when we ended in a tie, it wasn't going to come here. And so rather than just kick it around for another few months, that was my motion, was to get it back to you and let you make a decision. I was still opposed to it.
Okay.
Not opposed to bringing it to you.
Okay.
Gotcha. Okay.
Tom?
Tom Torgerson. Do you want the address like normal? 4808.
Yeah, please.
Hi, Bill, by the way. So I was the dissenting vote, but not for, excuse me, not for a specific reason, but for exactly the opposite, for the fact that there are no specific reasons. I know, for example, Jim Stafford has put countless hours into, his position with regards to the damage to docks and the likes, but I mean, I could speak to it for, the egregious regulation. We could also, with regards to no towing, and I completely do not approve of that. I was asked specifically, would you tow your kids on the river? And that's a qualified answer. On the weekends and holidays, no. Mornings, weekdays, probably yes. So it's a tough situation. We could also solve all traffic accidents by making it illegal to drive.
Thank
So
you.
Life carries risk, and you have to, if we only had one law, the law of common sense, we wouldn't have to have any other laws. So I don't disagree with what Jim says, but I do see, and the example, Sergeant, about jamming people to the center of the river, I think what the context of that really was is you effectively kind of narrow the navigational channel, and then when you have boats coming head on, now all of a sudden they don't have correct separation distance, so they're either, pulling throttle back to nothing or, diving off real quick. It kind of leaves you in a tough predicament when you're on the river. I frankly rarely go down the river anymore unless I'm going to a friend's or my sister's house. It's not worth the hassle. You could also no-wake the whole river and make it take 45 minutes to get from Greens Ferry to the mouth of the lake, which, again, you're decimating property values. You're really infringing on the people that want to utilize it. This is a tough position for you guys. I don't know that one summer, I don't know that it gives enough time. I would totally agree, because I know from me being on the lake forever, you see a blue boat and you shut it down. I mean, everybody pays attention. Quite frankly, if we charged greater fees for out-of-state users, directed that money towards these guys, and had more patrols on that river more frequently, just a suggestion, some way to have a presence there, and boater education, which of course I've been told by Nick, we don't have apparently the ability as a county to enforce something specifically for us, which is unfortunate. But so I'm coming up here, standing here, definitively telling you I don't know what to do. But I do agree, and it's the truth. I kind of say it in jest, but when you see a Marine Patrol boat, everybody is like, oh,
Same thing with ISP. Same thing with, well, I never slowed down for the sheriff's office anymore. But yeah, I mean, it is across the board. It is. And that's why, for me, patrolling's the only answer, because it doesn't matter if you have one law or 75 laws. If they're not there, then people will do what they want to do, whether it's on purpose. I doubt that people are like, hey, there's like 10 laws and there's no cops, let's go break them all. So I understand
it's just
that.
you're paying a little more attention. And I completely understand, for example, where some of the property owners on the river go. For example, if I go down to my sister's house and it's weekend or high traffic times, if there's not a spot on the inside, I will not park my boat on the exterior side of the dock. I won't do it. I mean, so I get it.
Yeah.
The problem is there's not a legitimate solution, and I think randomly throwing laws and continually changing laws, one, it's confusing to the citizens, but just trying to find a solution that way without some meat behind it, I just see it as futile.
Yeah, well, and I have to agree with what you said about giving it one more year. Giving it, just 1 year may not have been enough to really see what the impact is going to be. And if we can get Post Falls out more than 300 hours, I really see a good path forward with, status quo for this year and getting more deputies out there.
That's all I had to add, unless you had a question.
No.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you. Sergeant, did you want to jump in again?
Not really, other than our position isn't specifically that the ordinance is pushing people to the sides, but it has been discussed and been mentioned that is a side effect of this ordinance. It is a no doubt side effect of it. And I would point out as well, some of the things we got from some of the after-action stuff from some of the Marine deputies and some of my personal contacts, as well as the wake boat folks are very tuned into what's going on, and they know that they're in the spotlight, and they're trying their best, the vast majority of them, I believe, to follow the law. I think they're making a concerted effort to do that. I actually spoke to several boats myself this last summer and thanked them specifically because they were engaging in wake surfing, and they were well outside, in the distance they're supposed to be, and I thanked them specifically for doing that. And so I think they're trying to do the right thing, but the Spokane River, just like I've said, on 95 north of Hayden, what did the ITD do? They widened the road. They added 2 lanes.
But you can't do
Because
that
of
on the river.
busyness, we can't do that on the river. So what do we do with it?
Can we take out the docks?
No, that's,
Wouldn't that widen the river?
that would widen the river, that would widen the path being traveled, so.
Just checking
Yeah.
and kidding.
Yeah, and the sheriff's department does not want to restrict anything, but when we make these recommendations, obviously, we're gonna make the recommendations that will have an effect. And there's no doubt that if you restrict certain things, it will have an effect. There's no way to get around that. Not that it's the popular thing to do, but if you want to ask us, what can we do that will make a direct effect? Those are the things that you can do. And you gotta balance those with the rights of the voters.
Okay.
Oh, you gotta realize, yeah, so there's a caveat to this. The Marine program is almost solely funded off of the
Boaters.
Recreational Safety Boater Grant from the US Coast Guard. And that money is for boater safety, not dock protection. And so the Marine deputy salaries, all the fuel, the boats, all that stuff, and to a certain extent, we are paid out of revenues from the state as well, but it's boaters' safety. It's not meant to protect property, protect the docks and things. And so there is that fine balance too. You're right. That money is for boater safety, not dock protection.
Jim, you wanted to speak?
Limit, 5 minutes.
Yeah. I'm gonna limit you to 5 minutes. Is that okay?
Whatever.
I shouldn't ask for your permission. I'm trying to be polite. Go right ahead.
So Jim Stafford, representing the Spokane River Association. So I've said this before, it's the wakes, stupid. It's the generation of the excessive wakes by certain boats that are causing, and it is a safety issue because people will not let their kids go in the river anymore. They won't let them kayak, okay? There are issues with people using their canoes and even people that fish, okay, have decided that they're not going to do that. And the reason is the creation of these excessive wakes in a very narrow space in a very special river, okay? I've been through this so many times I feel like a stuck record.
Okay.
But it is the property damage, it is the safety, and it is the environmental. 5 to 6 years ago, those boats that created these wakes did not exist, and it wasn't a problem, okay? And as someone mentioned, if they could widen the highway, okay, or widen the river, we could probably mitigate the issues, but you can't. And in addition to that, there are some 50 to 60 more homes going in on the river during the next couple of years. And we continue to have increased traffic from out of state that are launched down in the Post Falls area. We did experience the results last year, okay? And tell me, these guys don't live on the river, okay? And they're right, the sheriff shows up and everything looks great. Putting all those wake boats in the middle of a river, which they did, I agree, they followed the rule, put those wake boats closer together and put more damage to the people that have to come up the river. I come up the river, I see a wake boat, I have to come off plane. If I cross that wake, my boat physically leaves the water if I'm going 25 miles an hour. The people in my boat are at risk. People have learned this, so they power down, okay? Then they power up and they create more wakes, all right? The solution that you guys came up with was almost correct. Because there is the statement of the ordinance that says no excessive wakes, period. You gave the sheriff what he wanted, a definition of an excessive wake. The mistake, 50 foot. If you eliminate the 150-foot excessive wake zone, and you leave the rule that's also a state law, okay, no excessive wakes, and leave the definition, this leaves a very enforceable, trainable exercise for the sheriff's department, and the people that boat on the river can learn what the law is and what is being enforced. Right now, they go to the middle of the river, and everything is the same as it was before. There was no change, and in many cases, if you view it. Okay.
Thank you. Come right up.
Ken Stauffer. I've talked before, I'm not going to bore the commission with stories of my granddaughter being knocked off the dock. Seems roll their eyes and poo-poo public safety issues. I'm kind of.
I actually take I take exception to that. You don't assign motive, okay? I am very much pro law enforcement, pro
I
safety.
didn't assign any motive, ma'am.
Well, it sounded like you were going in that direction, so I would,
Why don't you wait and see if I go in that direction before you chastise me, please?
Okay, go
I
right
have your,
ahead.
I have
It's
your,
okay.
your commissioner bio that's on the website here. According to your bio, you're all about protecting life and property. Can you honestly tell me that with you constantly against any kind of changes to the ordinance that would improve public safety, improve property damage protection, that how do you, I guess, how do you reconcile your bio to your viewpoints that you're very vocal about, typically behind doors, not usually in the public forum? You also tout your law enforcement background. Taking away the 150-foot zone would finally bring this ordinance in compliance with Idaho state law that's been in existence for multiple years. I would think that as with your law enforcement background, you'd be in favor of that instead of opposed to that. You also talk about that you, in your bio, that you want to make these laws as simple as possible. Why have the 150-foot exception?
I didn't vote for it, just so you know.
Great. So let's take it away. Do you have a problem taking away that 150-foot zone?
I do, because then it targets a certain activity when people move specifically to the river to use that activity. And most of the problems that I understand are holidays and weekends. So if I'm going to put any more restrictions on, it's going to focus on those days first.
I think you should spend some more time out there. I think your viewpoint would change dramatically.
I've spent actually a lot more time than
You mentioned
a
that the
little.
river is for everybody's use, correct?
Yep.
You're a proponent of that. That's one of the
Yes.
reasons why you're against all these regulations is the river's for everybody. The problem with the people who are generating the excessive wakes is they monopolize the waterways. The other 90% of the public that you're here supposedly to promote cannot use the river when these other 10% are monopolizing the use of the river. Do you not get it?
I very much get it.
Go easy.
And once
I know you're
again-
passionate, but
Yes.
relax.
And once again, why would I single out one? Why, okay, so let's make the river illegal for kayakers and swimmers. And then that way, the other 90% can use it with no problem. I'm not going to get into this debate with you. I do understand your passion. I appreciate that you live there and you see this all the time. I really have to concern myself with the people who own the water, okay? And that's everybody owns the water.
100% of the people who own the water.
Yes,
Not
exactly.
the 10% that we have the problem with. What's more beneficial? Doing something that benefits 10% of the users or doing something that benefits 90% of the users?
That depends.
Yeah, it depends on somebody's special interest. Thanks.
Okay. We scheduled 30 minutes. We can go a little bit over. Does anybody else wish to speak? Okay, Sergeant, anything to add?
No, sir. I think we're
How,
where we're at.
how would it affect you if we eliminate the 150-foot parameter?
It doesn't affect us either way. We're going to enforce what is passed and do our best to enforce it. I mean, here's the problem. I sat out there for many hours on the river this last summer and just watched, and I observed. And lots of boats nowadays, whether they're wake boats or not, I even got videos from, lots of videos from citizens sending me videos of pontoon boats driving past their dock, making a wake that they're claiming is excessive. It's a pontoon boat, okay? So, you know, how do we actually come up with we have a definition of excessive wake as being anything that is created artificially, right? So it's targeting wake boats. It's targeting wake boats. That's the spirit of it. But it's using ballasts, right? Aqua fins, all those things that are, or bow up, plowing type operations, making these large excessive wakes. The problem is the videos and photographs that we're getting are of boats that are not doing this activity, creating wakes that are large, considered to be excessive by these citizens, but they're not doing what the activities that the ordinance says that they're doing. And so, welcome to our world. Now we're trying to look at these wakes
But-
determine if they're excessive or not. And the only way that we said that we could effectively do that is if we can see that that vessel is engaged in an operation that is artificially creating it.
Right, but the way the excessive wake ordinance was written and commended by a number of people, because it was fairly specific, was not to target a specific class of boat, but rather the size of the wake. We tried not to discriminate against wakeboarders.
But
Okay.
it really does. If you drill it down, it really does. But in practice now, what we're receiving back from the citizens, and I've got the thumb drives full of these videos. I'll let you watch the 170 of them on the one thumb drive I received, and I watched every one of them. It's all sorts of different types of vessels that are creating these excessive wakes. And so I
Right,
guess
I
my
get it.
point is if in this citizen's view, the pontoon boat is creating an excessive wake, it doesn't meet the criteria for the ordinance. Doesn't have ballast, it's not bow up, it's not doing something as per the definition. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
But
but
it's
if he's
but it's-
generating an excessive wake,
But it,
never mind the fact
but
that
it has
it's...
to meet the definition.
Okay,
It has to meet the definition. It's not, size is not in the definition. It's how it's created, right?
yeah,
So
but
the-
I don't...
So
we-
the pontoon boat is just being a pontoon boat. It's just driving down the river, just driving like a pontoon boat does. And in the ordinance, it talks about, ballast tanks being filled, low in the water, or if it's bow up, they're just plowing through the water. They're not planed properly, doing operations similar to that. And so we have to balance this with the citizen. That pontoon boat is not doing what the ordinance is defining as creating an excessive wake. But in their mind, they believe it's excessive.
Yeah, but the fact still remains, well, when I swim, and I swim several nights a week, but this is on Lake Coeur d'Alene, and it's off the Lake Drive. And by the way, the biggest offenders that I find there are the pontoon boats, for some reason. Maybe we just sold so many of them that's all it seems I see, or a lot of them. Rarely do I see them bow up, simply because of the construction of the vessel. So I can't say that they're generating a heck of a lot of wake, from what I can tell. So if they're the outlier, it's okay that they're the outlier, because they're not really the ones that are violating. But anyway, Bill, did you want to jump in here?
No, I'm just listening to the conversation, and I appreciate it.
Okay, so let's move on. Doug, I think you made an interesting point. You said that basically your recommendation was that this come forward to us. Yes. Usually I'm the last one to go, which gives me a little bit of a benefit because I get to hear my others. So I'm going to stick my neck out first. I want to eliminate the 150-foot rule. I am not going to wait for the accident, and I'm certainly not going to wait for the death. And so I'm for eliminating it, because in essence what we did, and we didn't realize this, I think, when we did it, was by indicating a 150-foot threshold, we basically said, but it's okay if you generate an excessive wake beyond that. Look, the traffic increases, but the size of the river does not. That's just a fact of life. And when we talk about violations, let's not forget, yes, it is, you're right, it is the people's waterway, but it doesn't belong to the people of Washington. And they're in here using it. Oh, they're paying to use it, but it's not their river. It's our river. But they're adding to the traffic, they're adding to the load. And I don't want to sit here one day and have to say that I didn't do enough to prevent that accident, or that, especially with the towing. I think towing makes no sense, but I'm not prepared to go there at this time. But that's my position, so.
If you were talking accidents alone, then you need to get rid of jet skis. You need to get rid of the personal watercraft. They're the ones that cause or involved in the majority of the accidents. Is that true, Sergeant Klinkefus?
Yeah, I mean, accidents, we actually had a reduction in accidents overall, I think, for the summer. Justin Arts could speak to this. If you want to speak to the number of accidents, you responded to most of them.
I don't, yeah, you want to come forward? Please.
He can kind of dispel some of that a little bit.
Yeah, did full, Justin Arts, Deputy Justin Arts. We had 26 accidents this summer. Of those, 4 of them were injuries, a serious injury where it's a reportable injury. And of those 4, all 4 of them were towing related, but not surfing related. So not wake surfing.
Towing, okay.
Towing, so 3 of them were wake boarders, and then one of them was a tuber. And there were some other minor injuries from tubing, but serious injuries. The serious ones I'm talking about, there were 3 femur breaks. Those are all wake surfers. And then there was another one where there was an eye injury in a tubing accident. So.
Okay.
But none of them were from slow surfing.
So in your opinion, if we went one more year with the law the way it is, would that give you a better idea of what the future could go to?
I think you're going to see a lot of what we already saw this summer.
And it's also a fair bet, given the growth rate of the county, that we're also going to have more boat traffic.
We don't know that because if Washington opens up, there's a chance they'll use their own stuff. Again.
We can hope.
hopefully. We can hope, yeah.
Hope.
So,
Okay. Anything else?
I think Sergeant Klinkefus covered it all pretty well, other than, I'll leave it at that. I won't
Well, let me
express
ask
my
you
opinion.
this, really for either one of you. By eliminating the 150-foot rule, what are we really giving up here?
You're eliminating
wake surfing.
excessive wakes, which would be anybody that's plowing and wake surfing.
But when they generate those excessive wakes, and they're out in the middle of the lake, and you've got 200 feet on either side, that's still generating a lot of wake that's eventually hitting those docks.
Well, I believe in the ordinance it shows, so on the lake it's 300 feet, right? So if you eliminate the 150-foot rule.
No, I'm just talking about the river now.
Right, but if you eliminate the 150-foot rule, the 300-foot, in my understanding, would essentially cover all waterways, which essentially eliminates the river.
Correct. So then you're specifically targeting an activity that doesn't get to happen even on Tuesday morning at 8 a.m. when there are no other boats out there. Is that correct?
Yep. Yes.
Thank you.
By law.
Bill?
I'm in favor of eliminating a 150-foot rule.
Well, you're going to have to schedule a public hearing and rewrite the ordinance.
Jen? You want to come up to the mic, please?
When you changed the speed limit from, at nighttime from, what was it, 20 to 25 or whatever it
I
was?
don't know what it is offhand.
Did you have a public hearing on that?
We did.
I missed that somewhere.
Anytime there's an ordinance change, yeah. We have to go to a public hearing.
I know that, I know who it was, I didn't remember seeing the public hearing on that. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Do you want to comment?
No, I mean, nothing that's already been said. I mean, it's a contentious issue.
It is a contentious
Both sides
issue.
are very well entrenched, and they both have points, so.
So,
You could say that about a lot of things. You could
Life
say
is
that
risk.
about- Yeah, we could say
Life
that
is
about
risk.
pretty much everything we've done today, and so if we use that standard, it would be a whole different society if we use just that specific standard.
If we use what specific standard?
That somebody's gonna die.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean we can't take certain measures to try and lower that probability.
Of course.
Yeah.
You can't use that as a
and-
blind. We hear that every day. Every phone call we take, every email we respond to, it's, you better do something before somebody gets killed. But we could apply that, if we apply that blindly to
sure.
everything,
Yeah.
it's,
And we're in the risk management business anyway, so, we have to consider these
but
different
we're
things.
also in the protection of rights management as well.
All right. That'll take us down another hole. Anyway, I'm not concerned with the rights of the Washington voter, okay?
Right, but
I'm
it's
concerned
not
with-
the Washington voters who are doing all the activity. You have people who live there, who bought there specifically, and they are going to be shut down. That is my,
No, your point is valid, and I'm not trying to pick on the Washington voters, but they do add traffic. Now, the degree, I don't know, is it 10%? Is it 30%? But the fact is, they are adding traffic, and they're welcome to use the waterway, but as the traffic increases, but the size of the river does not. I mean, this is axiomatic, okay? You can only handle so much and accommodate so much traffic. I don't understand how you can increase population and decrease regulation. Now, maybe regulation's a dirty word, but the fact of the matter is, if you increase population, you increase the probability that there's going to be an accident, unless you take certain measures. Now, probably the best measure to take is to eliminate towing. I don't want to go there. You don't want to go there.
Oh, gosh.
I don't want to go there. But if we don't do something to mitigate the situation, we may be forced to go there eventually, and I'm hoping that doesn't have to happen, but go ahead.
Actually, Deputy Arts, do you know if the accidents were strictly Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or holidays? Okay, okay. Oh,
None were on the Spokane River.
that would have been helpful to know. Okay, so now,
Yeah, some of the serious were at night, and those tend to occur on the lake, I think. One of the most serious.
please, thank you.
Of the 26 crashes that we had in Kootenai County, 4 of them being serious, none of them were on the Spokane River. One of them was on Hayden Lake, the other 3 were out in the middle of Coeur d'Alene Lake.
Thank you, Deputy.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? I don't know that we necessarily, if we vote, it still has to go to an ordinance. You know, what do you think? Bill, you want to take a vote, or you want to take some time to think about it?
Well, I'm willing to take some time to think about it, but I think we need to move relatively quickly because the boating season in a few short weeks, thank goodness, is going to be upon us.
Let me ask you this. What if we were to do something by time of day and/or time of the week? Most of the heavy boating is occurring, fair to say, on the weekends.
I would say that's a fair statement, but I don't remember which one of you made the comment. I believe it was you, sir, back there, but the river's busy all summer. It really is. I mean, anymore, even a Tuesday afternoon, the water's busy. I mean, you would tend, if you implemented a weekend versus weekday ordinance, you would impact more so probably out-of-staters, I think. Most out-of-staters would be there on the weekends generally, I think. And so it would be better for locals, I believe. But honestly, and for us, for the sheriff's office, you know, we'll enforce what you guys pass.
Okay. Anyone else? So why don't we take a couple of weeks and think about it, and then we'll make a decision. We'll vote at that point, and depending on how we vote, it might or might not go to an ordinance. Excuse me, a public hearing.
Okay.
Any more comments, finally?
I think it's a good idea.
Okay, I'm sorry, Jim, you want to make a final comment? I think because we need time to consider all the arguments that have been made. Fair? And we still have plenty of time. We're not about to start voting in the next 2 weeks. I suspect we'll do this within the next 15 days. And then if we do, and if we decide, and if we vote that we're going to eliminate the 150-foot rule, then we go to a public hearing, and that's a 28-day notice. So it'll still be done well ahead of the boating season. Not a problem.
Just want to point out one thing. You know, Sheriff Norris has been sworn in, and he hasn't been able to.
Well, that's another.
He hasn't been
good
able to
point.
weigh in on
Thank
this either, so it wouldn't hurt to give us a little bit of time to make sure and properly brief him so that he can.
Yeah, good point.
So that
Good
he can
point.
give an opinion as well. We need to get his direction from us to where he'd like us to go with this as well. So.
And Sheriff Norris was present at the same meeting of the Friends Group that where you and I and Justin presented at. Jim was there, of course, and so he's got some level of knowledge.
He does have some knowledge of
Right.
it.
Fair enough.
But yeah, a
Good
good
reason to
a
wait.
good briefing to him so he can make some decisions on how he wants to guide us.
Good point. Okay. Time is now 2:15. Meeting adjourned. Oh, go ahead.
Okay, unadjourned, Tina.
This, and I do this just under the last thing, public
Okay.
discussion, so I guess I'm not really doing this as a Waterways Committee member, but I did bring it up, and I said it in a humorous way, but I'm dead serious. Is there anything that the commissioners can do to allow me to go personally remove the litter, which is why I deemed it that way, that's all over our lake and placed there illegally, which would be all these personal private buoys that do not belong there, because I am going to start removing them. I see them as litter placed on my public property.
Are they drifting out into the middle of the?
They're out everywhere, Chris. They need to be permitted. They are illegal. They are not permitted through Idaho Department of Lands. In my opinion, that makes them litter.
If you wanted to contract with IDL to get those, so they would use you as a contractor to remove those, they may love it.
I have a problem here because that's theft.
No, not if IDL.
Isn't that what, well, you weren't at the last meeting, were you?
No.
But those things are, they're a nuisance, they're a hazard, they're unsightly. So again, and I know, I don't want to start a whole new thing, but I hate them.
It's not a commissioner thing. We don't have control over it. It's strictly IDL.
Nick, you want to weigh in on this? Just to make sure that we, I mean, I'd love to say, go do it. Absolutely.
Thanks, Commissioner. I agree that we have a lot of buoys out there that do not serve the public well. It's confusing for the boater, particularly when they purchase one that does look regulatory in nature. It's incredibly difficult for the seasonal marine deputies to determine which ones are legitimate county ones versus homeowner deployed. I'm going to defer to Sergeant Klinkefus and his team to talk about the legality of removing those, but IDL is the responsible party. That's been established by way of the last year at Hayden Lake, so it's no longer a question.
Do you want to contact IDL? Ask them if they're okay with it?
Yeah, sure. I'll talk to my friend Mike.
You're the liaison.
Yeah, Mike will love to hear from me.
So IDL has a process
Yes.
that's been vetted through the state attorney, of notifying homeowners via mailers saying, hey, you're in violation, and giving them a certain time frame. That's what they did on Hayden Lake.
Yep.
And then the ones that were left over
That's
after
right,
the
I remember this.
violation, they went out and removed them. IDL actually did the removal of them. And it is solely, it was, I guess we'd have to get Sheriff Norris's input on this, but it was the opinion of Sheriff Wolfinger that it was IDL's jurisdiction and that we basically would stay out of it. And ultimately, if you did remove their buoy without their permission, it is with
theft.
the intent to permanently deprive them of it,
Right.
it could be considered a theft.
Right. Now, if it was floating, you could rescue it.
Yep.
And then just hold it until they came and got it. No, but and the process worked for Spokane River. It worked for Hayden Lake. So it is a process. But we know.
IDL, just so you know, when we transfer in a real estate transaction, a lot of property, you're supposed to transfer the dock.
You're supposed to transfer the dock, yeah.
They go back through not just prior Google Earth photos, but clear back into a Vista, which was Washington Water Power photos. I just had one this summer, 9 square feet, a permitted dock, but they ascertained it was 9 square feet. And they were pretty close when I went and measured it. That's how accurate they are.
Wow.
And they're getting on people's cases for a 28-year-old dock. They wanted us, and we had to cut off 9 square
Oh,
feet
yeah,
of the
I've been
dock.
there.
Wow.
But yet people can go throw this litter all over the lake.
And they won't do
and they
anything
don't do
about it.
anything. I have a
Yeah.
huge problem.
Okay.
Not your
I'll
guys'
work,
problem.
no, I'll
No,
work
but-
with
but it's
you and
something
I
we
do.
try to deal
I'd
with.
be happy to jump in.
Okay.
All right, then?
Thank you.
Now we can adjourn. 2:20. Thank you, everyone.
Bye, Bill. Okay, so we'll get